Transforming your life with hypnotherapy just got easier with your host, Julie from CoachingHypnosis.net.
Welcome back, dear listener, to Coaching Hypnosis. We are on day 4 of our 30-day countdown, the world's darkest hypnosis cases. Up until now, we've explored the psychological prison cells built on words, status, and emotional vulnerability. Today, we're crossing into a terrifying and frankly deeply bizarre threshold. We're looking at a case where hypnotic suggestion wasn't just used to manipulate lives, it was weaponized to execute an act of mass domestic terrorism. Today, we decode the case of Shoko Asahara and the Shinrikyo doomsday cult. On March 20, 1995, the world watched in horror as members of this group released sarin gas onto the Tokyo subway system during morning rush hour, killing 13 people and injuring over 6,000. Now, what stunned the global community wasn't the brutality of the attack, but who carried it out. The perpetrators weren't uneducated radicals. They were Japan's elite, top-tier physicians, brilliant physicists, and computer scientists from the country's most prestigious universities. How does a partially blind yoga teacher convince a room full of elite scientists to manufacture chemical weapons and murder innocent citizens? The public narrative defaults to standard brainwashing, but as a hypnotist, I look at the mechanics. Asahara didn't just talk to these people. He combined severe sensory deprivation and biochemical distress with high-level hypnotic programming to completely override his followers' logical faculties. In July 2018, Asahara's run finally ended as he was executed by hanging in Tokyo. But the blueprint he left behind remains one of the most chilling case studies in psychological warfare. Let's look at the actual clinical architecture of how he overrode the human survival instinct. Shoko Asahara started Shinrikyo as a harmless yoga and meditation class in Tokyo. But as he became obsessed with power and apocalyptic prophecies, his meditation training evolved into a highly clinical process designed to break down a person's neurology. To break a brilliant mind, you must first break the biological machine that houses it. Asahara subjected his inner circle to extreme isolation and sleep deprivation combined with starvation diets. When a human being is starved, sleep-deprived and kept in darkness, the brain's critical faculty, the analytical filter that separates reality from illusion, completely shuts down. The brain drops into a permanent survival-driven theta wave state. This is an open backdoor to the subconscious mind. Once his followers were in this deeply altered state, Asahara introduced his ultimate hypnotic tool, the cosmological initiation. Followers were placed in sensory deprivation cells and forced to wear heavy electronic headbands wired with electrodes. They were told these caps would synchronize their brainwaves with Asahara's own enlightened mind. Let's pause on this for a second. If a coach today walks into your boardroom and asks you to wear a giant, clunky electronic helmet wired with tinfoil and AAA batteries to align your frequencies, you're probably going to call security or at least leave a terrible review on LinkedIn. It is the ultimate dark wellness scam. But when you're starved and sleep deprived in a dark cell for a week, your standards for acceptable headwear drop significantly. Suddenly you're like, yep, absolutely, wire me up, let's sync our vibes. In reality, these sci-fi headgear contraptions delivered actual low-voltage electrical pulses and played repetitive loop-recorded audio tracks of Asahara's voice chanting mantras for days, hours, or even weeks at a time. In hypnosis, we use monotonous repetition to quiet the conscious mind, but Asahara's took his principle and industrialized it by feeding his voice directly into their ears while their brains were physically exhausted and electrically stimulated. He achieved what we call cognitive anchoring. His commands bypass their moral and ethical filters, entirely. The scientists in the cult ceased to process reality through their own logic. They began to process reality only through the voice in the headset. When Asahara later suggested that the world was ending and that killing outsiders was actually a spiritual act of salvation, a concept called Fower, their bypassed minds accepted it as absolute truth. The tragedy of Shinrikyo provides a massive urgent lesson for anyone studying mind control, coaching, or clinical hypnotherapy. It proves that intelligence is not a shield against psychological manipulation. In fact, highly analytical minds can sometimes be more vulnerable because they are wired to find complex patterns and systems. If you present a smart person with a giant elaborate puzzle, even if that puzzle involves dynamic brainwave helmets and apocalyptic math, they will stay up all night trying to solve it rather than realizing the guy who built the puzzle is totally unhinged. Asahara achieved this total neurological hijack using 3 specific mechanisms. 1. Neurological fatigue as an induction. High-intensity intellectual performers rely heavily on their prefrontal cortex for critical thinking. By systematically exhausting that specific part of the brain through lack of sleep and nutrition, Asahara forced the brain into a primitive, highly compliant state where it would accept any directive just to survive. 2. The direct pipeline of auditory looping. When a hypnotic suggestion is played continuously to a fatigued brain in darkness, it creates a phenomenon known as subconscious imprinting. The suggestion becomes a permanent background track in the subject's mind, completely drowning out their own internal monologue. 3. The weaponization of altruism. Asahara didn't ask his followers to do evil things for the sake of being evil. He used hypnotic framing to twist their innate desire to do good. He convinced them that by launching an attack, they were saving the souls of the victims from bad karma. He recoded murder as a high-level spiritual rescue mission. This is why the Shinrikyo case is so profoundly dark. Asahara didn't just manipulate his followers' external choices. He literally rewired the biological hardware of their brains, turning brilliant healers and innovators into tools of destruction. The absolute lesson of Shinrikyo is that your critical thinking faculty is a sacred boundary. Any framework, any environment, or any guide that requires you to exhaust your body, mute your intellect, or wear sketchy electrode headgear to achieve success or enlightenment is a threat to your sovereignty. Real, ethical breakthrough work honors your health, sharpens your mind, and deepens your connection to your own internal compass. No tinfoil required. If you found yourself caught in an exhaustively busy loop or ignoring your own health just to stay in the game, it's time to stop and reset. You don't have to be fueled by pain or exhaustion to be successful. You will go much further when you're fueled by peace. If you're ready to put the invisible weight down and lead with a clear, unburdened, and completely sovereign mind, I invite you to book your free 40-minute clarity call. Together, we will clear the mental noise, re-anchor your nervous system, and install a powerful, unshakable subconscious identity. Remember, aligned subconscious plus healed history equals unshakable leadership. Thank you for listening. Align your mind, visualize your future, grow your business. Mindfully yours, Julie.